I have in front of me Costas Ioannou, very well known within the UK Cypriot community, and he's going to tell us about himself. It's over to you now, Costas.
Yes, my name is Costas Ioannou. I work for the Metropolitan Police Service as a Police Community Support Officer, working in the borough of Camden and Islington, which merged about 4 years ago. I've been doing that role for the last 20 years, but leading up to that point, I started off from coming over from Cyprus to England in 1959, landing at Victoria Station on the 11th of November 1959. I lived for a short period of time just off Seven Sisters Road, then moved on to Kentish Town, Dartmouth Park Road in Kentish Town, just below Highgate. And then gradually the family moved further south, where I went to school in New Cross, to a school that doesn't exist anymore, funnily enough, but it's called South East London Tech. But during my time within schooling, I worked in a fish and chip shop, doing everything like a lot of Cypriot people do. Started off cleaning potatoes, then gradually cleaning fish, then gradually being taught how to cook, and so forth and so forth. And I did that for a while. Then as I got into my teens, mid-teens to late teens, while I'm still at school, I then got into the fashion industry, did a bit of ironing here and cotton cutting and things like that. And then when I left school, I went into photography, developing films and that for an art dealer in Ladbroke Grove. But because where I lived in Welling in South East London, the journey was too far for me. And even the guy who I worked for said to me, this is not going to work out because you're travelling too much, you're going to be knackered, being in the darkroom, waiting for films to turn up for you to develop and then print out photographs for the antique shop to bid from auctions on the photographs that I've developed for auction houses. So anyway, after leaving that, I went back into a fish and chip shop and got involved with my wife, and then afterwards I went back into the rag trade, working out of a showroom in the West End. And I was doing that up until 1989, where I was made redundant and thinking, what am I going to do now? So it's either go back into the fashion industry or go into fish and chips. They're the only two trades I knew at the time. And every job I applied for, the good excuse was, you're too qualified for the role. In other words, I didn't want to pay the money you were asking. Subsequently, I decided I'd look for a fish and chip shop, which I did. I found one, I bought it, worked in it for, I think, 12 years. And
where was the fish and chip shop?
It was in Petticoat Lane Market.
Oh, really?
Just below the city. It was good fun. I sold that because you don't have a life. When the responsibility is yours and the buck stops with you, you don't have annual leave, you don't have days off. I had one day off. I worked from Sunday to Friday, and on a Saturday you're still going out to cash and carries, buying bits and pieces, then sleeping, and you're not spending much quality time with your kids and everything else. And that's the one thing I regret and miss, is not spending too much time with my kids when they were growing up. But then I sold it in the summer of 2002, and while I was waiting for a buyer and everything else, I was thinking, what am I going to do afterwards? You sit around home doing nothing, or you go to Cyprus for a few months and you come back, but you still need employment because bills have still got to be paid for and everything else. So while I was contemplating on what was I going to do, this role of Police Community Support Officer was being launched by the Metropolitan Police, being the eyes and ears of a community, whatever community it may be. But I thought, yeah, that's not too bad, walking around representing the police. Why not? So I applied for it, got the job, and the rest is history. And I've thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it, and I would recommend it to any 20 to 22-year-old to 25-year-old. I would, because you work 35 years, you're out, the pension's not too bad. Okay, it was better, but it's still not too bad now. And
I mean, you're active within what's a police association called the...
right, yes. What it is, it's within, because of the Lawrence incident that happened in the mid-90s or early 90s with Stephen Lawrence, okay? The Met Police, and before that, it was just before that actually, there was a young child found in the River Thames, a black child who was a victim of some form of voodoo. And the police, while they were investigating the crime, they were hitting brick walls within the community of where they believed that child was from. And one day I heard the story at a building near Victoria, a police building, that the officers, the detectives were in the canteen talking about it, and there was a sweeper or a cleaner from that country and overheard the officers mentioning his language, his tribe within that country. And he said, sorry, but I'm from that area. I said, really? Oh. God has sent you to us, because they were finding barriers. And they were with them until the outcome of the case in trying to break down barriers within their communities and so forth. And so what the commissioner and the assistant commissioner at the time, what they decided to do was to create staff associations that the individuals that work for the police, whether they're civil staff, whether they're police officers or whatever, they can come together and help bridge the gap between individual communities. So within the Metropolitan Police, I belong to the Metropolitan Police Greek and Cypriot Staff Association. But like our association, there is a Jewish association, there's a Sikh association, there's a Muslim association, there's a Christian association, there's a transsexual association, an Irish generation, a Slavic association. So there's a lot of associations that represent ethnic backgrounds that they were formed to assist the police or specialist units with certain crimes. Now, for me, being of Greek Cypriot origin, in 2004, when the Olympic Games were being held in Athens, several of the Metropolitan Police Cypriot staff, whether they're police officers or civil staff, were requested to go to Greece as interpreters to assist the specialist units that were out there to protect the interests of the British athletes and so forth. And so I was seconded to go out there for about, I think, 7 days, something like that. I've also been to prisons to assist units, specialist units again, to interview Greeks that are in prison for certain things and everything else. And basically that's what a staff association is there for. It's to bridge a gap between the community one represents with the police, with the specialist units that might be having difficulty in reaching out to those communities. And that's what we're there for.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I found you very interesting, and I'm sure others will find this interview interesting. And thank you for talking to us.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.